I was born a demon. At 3, I tortured animals. At 7, I killed a person. My family was afraid, so they had me locked away in a psychiatric hospital. 12 years later, my kind, gentle, good-hearted older brother killed himself. My mother got me released from the hospital. The moment I walked out, she looked at me with pure hatred and said, "If you really are a demon, please kill everyone who bullied your brother." There's a legend in our family. When twins are born, one is always a demon. In the old days, if twins were born, they would burn both of them. Thankfully, the times have changed and that's not allowed anymore, which is how my brother and I survived. Before we turned 3, everything was fine. We were both so cherubic and cute that our family adored us. Many in the family even started to say the old legend about one twin being a demon was probably fake. It was just a weird rule written into the family code and records, which is why everyone took it so seriously. Apparently, in our entire clan of several hundred people, there hadn't been a record of twins for over 300 years. Then on my 3rd birthday, a big white goose pecked at me. I grabbed its neck with both hands and right in front of everyone, bit into its throat with my own teeth. Blood sprayed all over my face and clothes. I dragged the goose's body home with one hand and proudly presented it to my mother, telling her we were having goose for dinner. My parents were stunned. The story spread through the whole town, and everyone started saying I was the demon child. But because witnesses saw the goose attack me first, my parents just thought I was aggressive, not necessarily a demon. The clan elders also figured that killing a child over something like this was illegal in this day and age, so they just told my parents to keep a close eye on me and didn't pursue it further. After that, any animal in the town that dared to attack me, I killed viciously. My parents had to pay out a lot of money because of it. Then when I was 5, some kids in town called me a demon and ganged up to bully me. I nearly beat the leader, the kid who was the town bully, to death. If the adults hadn't shown up and stopped me, he would have died right there. After that, I was locked in my room and not allowed to go outside. Only my brother would come in to play with me. After he started school, he would tell me fun stories about his day and teach me how to read. He said once I could read, he'd show me all sorts of novels that were super interesting. My brother shared everything with me first. He was my only friend. When I was 7, I heard my mother crying in the yard. I curiously peeked through the window. The town bully had beaten my brother, Jake, badly. But the bully's family was powerful, so when my parents told the clan leader, all he got was a verbal scolding. But my brother's right hand was broken, the tendons severed. The doctor who came said that even if it healed, his hand would never be nimble again. At most, he'd be able to hold a bowl and chopsticks. Anything over 10 pounds would be hard to hold steady. That night, I pried open the window and snuck out. When my parents got the news and rushed over, the town bully, the kid who crippled my brother, was dead. And he had died horribly. The bully's parents had beaten me badly, too, but I was still alive. When I saw my parents, I smiled and said, "I got revenge for my brother." But in that moment, my parents couldn't smile. The bully's family couldn't smile. Seeing me, a 7-year-old kid, covered in blood and grinning, sent a chill down everyone's spine. The police came later. Because of my age and what I had done, I was sent to a psychiatric hospital. For 12 years, my brother came to see me every single weekend without fail. He brought me good food, taught me to read, and gave me storybooks. Then one day, a month and a half went by, and my brother didn't come. Instead, my mother came, someone I hadn't seen once in all that time. I almost didn't recognize her after so many years. Her face was terrifyingly haggard, her eyes filled with hatred, and her hair was a mess. She had already completed all the paperwork. She was taking me out. Maybe because I had been so calm and stable for those 12 years, they were able to process my discharge. My mom didn't say a single word the whole way. I just watched her quietly. When we got back home, a strong smell of medicinal herbs hit me as soon as I stepped into the yard. Mom finally spoke. "Your dad's paralyzed. Someone beat him and broke his spine. He's bedridden now. Dad's so honest, he never bothers anyone. How could he get beaten up?" I said, my tone laced with mockery. Mom clenched her fists, looked down without answering, and walked into my brother's room. When I followed her inside, I saw a figure under a white sheet on my brother's bed. The smile on my face froze. I rushed over and threw back the sheet. I saw my brother's face, pale and bluish, lying there peacefully. I ripped the entire sheet off. There were ligature marks and scratches on his neck, the kind left by human hands. I then unbuttoned his shirt. His body was covered in wounds, some scabbed over, some scarred, and some that hadn't healed and were now festering and weeping. Mom walked over silently and looked at my brother. She didn't cry, maybe she had no tears left. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you really are a demon, then please kill everyone who hurt your father and your brother. And if you hate me for being so heartless back then, you can kill me too." "Who was it?" I asked calmly. Through clenched teeth, my mother told me everything. Because I killed the town bully's son when I was 7, his family never let it go. They were always looking for ways to torment our family, and they even got other people in the town to join in. Since my dad and my brother were both quiet, honest men, they became constant targets. When they were younger, they would just beat up my brother, sometimes tearing his clothes and making him walk home naked. Later, it got worse. They started using lit cigarettes to burn him, carving humiliating words into his skin with knives. When the words would start to heal, they'd drag him back and carve over the same spots again. At first, the village chief and the clan elders would just talk to them, but they always told our family to just let it go and not make a big deal out of it. Eventually, my dad couldn't take it anymore and got into a fight with the bully's family. But they were ruthless and had more people. My dad's spine was broken, and he's been bedridden for 2 years. Even after that, the clan elders only gave the bully's family a light punishment and made them pay some money. They never even called the police. The elders said if we called the police, they would enforce the old family rules and kick us out of the village. All because our family had twins and I was the demon. After that incident, the bully's family didn't back down. They became even more brazen. My brother couldn't stand it anymore and drank pesticide. After hearing all this, a wide grin spread across my face. "So I can do whatever I want, right?" "Yes. I want them dead. All of them, dead." Mom screamed the last 3 words, her eyes wild with madness. I smiled and looked at my brother's body. "Jake, from now on I'm you. This is going to be so much fun." From that day on, Mom stayed at home, keeping Jake's body in a freezer. I put on his clothes and started to learn his life. Jake had 11 cigarette burns on his body. I took Dad's cigarettes and burned myself in the exact same spots. I replicated every scar on his body, one by one, my face completely expressionless the entire time. Mom watched from the side. For some reason, for the first time, she actually smiled. Before, if she saw me doing something like this, she would have called me a lunatic, a demon. But this time, as she looked at me, her eyes were filled with joy and relief for the first time. I stayed home for a few days to let the wounds scab over. Then I got the same haircut as my brother and put on his clothes. Even Mom couldn't tell us apart. When she saw me, she rushed forward and suddenly hugged me. "Jake. That's my brother's name. My name is Ben, my brother was Jake." "Mom, I'm heading over to the master's place," I said, mimicking my brother's gentle tone. Mom nodded, staring at me in a daze. My imitation was so perfect that for a moment, she really thought I was Jake. I arrived at the master carpenter's workshop, the scent of sawdust filling the air. The master was an old carpenter, over 60, with the best skills in town. He always had a kind smile on his face and was an honest man, one of the few people in town who didn't treat our family differently because of the twins. When he saw me walk in, the master was clearly surprised. He stopped what he was doing, took off his glasses, and looked me over carefully. "Jake, are you all right? I heard that Carter gave you trouble again." "What a shame. I'm just a craftsman. I don't have any other power to help you. If you're not feeling well, take a few more days off. I'll still pay you your full wage." I shook my head and smiled. "I'm fine, master. I want to get back to learning the craft." With that, I took the wood planer he handed me and started working on a piece of wood, imitating how my brother used to do it. A little while later, the master's other apprentice, Ethan, arrived. He was shocked to see me and walked over, clapping me on the shoulder. "Jake, I heard Carter was hassling you again? That guy has really gone too far. Someone ought to teach him a lesson." I just gave a faint smile. "It's in the past. Let's just focus on our work." Ethan looked like he wanted to say more, but he eventually fell silent and grabbed his tools to start working. However, less than half an hour later, he made an excuse about needing to run an errand and quickly left the workshop. The best piece of land in the village had been developed into a rustic resort, the most profitable business in town. It was Carter's family's business, and he and a few other local guys worked there. Ethan snuck in like a thief and waved. "Carter, Jake's back. He looks like he's doing okay." "Whoa, Jake's body is pretty tough. If he's fine after all that, we can really have some fun with him from now on," Carter laughed. "What if we try branding him?" "Hey, we could brand the resort's logo right on his face. He'd be a walking advertisement," someone else chimed in. "Great idea. Go get the blacksmith to make it. Once it's ready, we'll go get him." Carter's eyes lit up as he laughed. He clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Good job. I'll take you out for drinks and with the girls next time. Now go back and keep an eye on Jake for me." "Yeah, thanks, Carter." Ethan headed back happily, excited at the thought of the beautiful women who hung around Carter. "Ethan, you seem pretty happy." My voice made him jump. He saw me leaning against a tree trunk, holding a carpenter's scraper and sharpening a branch. Ethan's face went pale instantly. He forced a laugh. "Jake, what are you doing here?" I gave him a strange smile. "I can smell the sweet scent of blood. Yours already smells delicious." Ethan's eyes widened in shock. Seeing my expression, he stumbled back several steps. What do you want?" As he turned to run, I threw the scraper in my hand. It hit his calf, the blade slicing through flesh and making him fall face first into the dirt. "Ah, Jake, you're insane. Do you know what'll happen if you mess with me? I'm with Carter, you wouldn't dare." "Ah." Before he could finish, I plunged the freshly sharpened wooden stake into the palm of his hand and hammered it into the ground with a rock. "Ugh, Jake, big brother Jake, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been a snitch. I'll never do it again, I swear. Please let me go." "Ah." With his palm pinned to the dirt, every struggle sent searing pain through him. He had to relax his pinned arm to lessen the agony. But soon his other hand was pinned to the ground as well. He screamed and begged for mercy as I pinned his limbs to the ground in a spread eagle position. Every strike of the rock made him convulse in pain. When I was done, I picked up the last wooden stake, about a foot long, and walked over to his head. He, who was already half dead from the pain, suddenly snapped awake and shook his head in terror. No. Please, I beg you. I'll never do it again. Please don't kill me." I squatted down beside his head and smiled. As long as Jake was alive, I could never come out. His kindness was the only thing that could suppress the evil in my heart. Thank you for letting me out of the hospital." Hearing this, Ethan's eyes bulged as he stared at me, trembling. You're the demon." I smiled and pointed the wooden stake at his mouth. A half scream, and then just the sound of a rock hitting wood. Half a minute later, it was quiet, except for a few crows that had spotted the food pinned to the ground, wondering when they could start their meal. When I got back to the master's workshop, I went back to work. The master didn't ask any questions. It was my first time doing any woodworking, and I didn't know anything, but the master didn't criticize me at all. He just patiently taught me. Near noon, the village suddenly got noisy with sounds of crying and shouting. Before long, a man ran in, saying breathlessly, "Mr. Chun, something happened to your apprentice. He's on the West Mountain Path. Go have a look." The master glanced at me, put down his tools and waved his hand. "Let's go." We arrived at the mountain path, which was already surrounded by a crowd. The wooden stakes had been pulled from Ethan's body, which was now covered with a straw mat. His mother was crying beside him. Only men were there, women weren't allowed, for fear they'd be too frightened. Even some of the men looked pale, clearly shaken by the sight. Everyone was whispering about who could have done it, but not a single person suspected me. Because in this town, Jake was famous for being a good person, the kind who wouldn't fight back even if you hit him or cursed him. The old clan elder and the village chief ordered an investigation and told the master to quickly build a coffin for Ethan. The master and I worked through the night to finish the coffin. In the middle of the night, we used a pushcart to deliver it to Ethan's house. We had just carried the coffin down and placed it in the yard when Ethan's mother suddenly slapped the master across the face. "You old bastard! I sent my son to you as an apprentice out of good faith, How could you not watch over him? Why wasn't it you who died, you old goat? Then, Ethan's sister suddenly kicked me and screamed, pointing at my nose. You demon spawn. When your mother had twins, she should have burned both you and your psycho brother to death. And your mother? Who knows what kind of monster she slept with? Your whole family should be dead. Why did my brother have to die? I looked down at the footprint on my stomach, then smiled up at her. How would you like me to die? Under my smile, Ethan's sister's expression clearly became flustered. She half raised her hand as if to hit me but hesitated, ultimately letting it drop. She stomped her foot, took a few steps back, and screamed, Dad, Jake assaulted me. Just then, Ethan's father came over, his eyes blazing with fury. You little punk, you dare mess with my daughter. Before he even finished his sentence, his hand swung towards my cheek. I didn't dodge. I let the slap land, the crisp sound echoing loudly in the quiet night. The master stood to the side, witnessing everything. He opened his mouth to intervene, but Ethan's mother shoved him back, shouting, What, you old bastard? You going to team up with this demon spawn to bully us now? You got my son killed, and now you want to kill the rest of us? The master lowered his head and said nothing more. Ethan's entire family vented all their grief and resentment on me. Their attitude made me realize this was how they must have treated my brother all the time. I didn't fight back against their accusations and beatings, I just stood there and took it. After a while they finally got tired. Ethan's father said to the master, Leave the kid here. He can work for us. Damn, this kid is weird. He didn't make a sound even after all that. The master glanced at me, his eyes holding an unreadable expression. He said softly, This will be hard on you. With that, he pushed the empty cart and left in silence. Demon spawn, get over here and move my son's body into the coffin, Ethan's father barked. I got up and silently helped carry Ethan's body carefully into the coffin, working late into the night. They made me keep watch outside by myself while Ethan's family all went inside to rest. Late at night, I heard a rustling sound coming from Ethan's sister's room. I crept over quietly, peeking through a small gap in the curtains. I saw Carter climb up to the second-floor window from outside and slip into her room. I've missed you so much, come here. The moment Carter got inside, he grabbed Ethan's sister, his hands eagerly kneading her body. Carter, be gentle. My brother's dead. You have to help me find the killer, Ethan's sister panted. Silly woman. Isn't it better that your brother is dead? Now there's no one to fight you for the inheritance, Carter chuckled, starting to take off her clothes. Are you stupid? If I find the killer, I can make him pay me off, and then have him sent to prison. Ethan's sister giggled as they tangled together, not even bothering to fully undress before they started going at it against the window. That demon spawn Jake was acting weird today. No matter how much we hit him, he didn't make a sound. And the way he looked at me was unsettling. His smile gave me the creeps, Ethan's sister said. Carter sneered. His brother killed my little brother when he was 7. After I'm done, don't clean yourself up. Go seduce Jake. I'll come through the front door to pay my respects to your brother, and I'll happen to walk in on it. I'll make sure he pays with his life. A vicious glint flashed in Ethan's sister's eyes. Okay. Suddenly, the room erupted in flames, the light illuminating the entire space. Carter and Ethan's sister panicked. The fire was spreading incredibly fast. Smoke had barely started to rise before half the house was engulfed. Damn it, it's burning too fast. Someone must have poured diesel. Let's go. Carter hastily pulled up his pants and rushed to the door, only to find it chained shut from the outside. Damn it, it's locked. Carter immediately ran to the window, but it was the same story. It had been barred shut from the outside with a wooden plank. It must be the person who killed Ethan. Damn it, what kind of monster did Ethan piss off? He's trying to burn your whole family alive and I got caught up in it. Carter cursed in a panic. Ethan's sister was already frozen with fear. Carter spotted a chair, immediately grabbed it, and smashed the window. However, just as he jumped out, I was waiting for him. The wooden club in my hand swung down hard on his head. Carter didn't even see what hit him before he collapsed, knocked out cold. But Ethan's sister saw me. She looked at me in terror. You're the one who killed my brother. No, I didn't know. Please let me go. It has nothing to do with me. I jumped through the window, holding the blood-stained club, and slowly walked towards her. The fire next to us was spreading quickly. I could already feel the searing heat on my skin. Ethan's sister suddenly had an idea. She pulled open her clothes, exposing her pale stomach. Jake, I know you like me. I won't call you a toad anymore. I'm yours right now. You can do whatever you want. From now on, you can have me whenever you want. I'll even be your wife. I'll do anything you say. Just please let me go. I walked up to her, grabbed her by the neck and pulled her close. A lot of people in the village bullied Jake. That was thanks to you, wasn't it? I know I was wrong. When you wrote me that love letter, I actually had feelings for you. But my mom saw it. She said you were a demon spawn, that if I got involved with you, my life would be over. To distance myself from you, I was the one who spread it around. I didn't know so many guys in the village liked me. They only bullied you to get on my good side. I swear I never told them to do it. Ethan's sister pleaded, spilling everything from the past. I sneered. You didn't tell them, but you tacitly approved. You even rewarded the ones who hurt Jake, which made them bully him even more relentlessly. I was wrong, Jake. Please forgive me. I'll listen to you from now on. Take me somewhere safe. I'll serve you right now. I'm the village beauty, and I'm really good in bed. You'll definitely like it. Just give me a chance, she begged. You want to please me, huh? I'd like to see this. I smiled and pulled her clothes back up, getting her dressed. A look of joy crossed her face. She thought her life was saved. She'd let Jake have his way with her tonight, and then when people came, she'd have him killed. I hugged her from the front and whispered in her ear, by the way, my name is Ben. Jake was my brother. Ethan's sister was stunned, her eyes instantly filled with terror. The next second, I pushed her into the sea of flames beside us. Ah! She fell into the inferno. The pain made her roll around frantically, but the fire had already ignited her clothes. Even as she rolled out of the fire pit, her body was engulfed in flames. I jumped out of the window. Most of the room was now consumed by fire. The ferocious blaze crackled loudly. The sounds of panic had attracted Ethan's parents. They rushed out and saw the scene, their eyes filled with shock and rage. Jake, you set the fire. My daughter. I'll kill you. Ethan's father roared and charged at me. I brought the club down on his head. The thick wooden club snapped from the force, and he collapsed to the ground. I raised the broken piece of the club and continued to smash it into his head, splattering blood all over the floor nearby. Seeing her husband fall, Ethan's mother was so scared she collapsed onto the ground, unable to speak. I looked at her coldly and said simply, I'm sending you to a family reunion. Then I knocked her out too and dragged both of them to the coffin in the center of the yard. I stuffed Ethan's father and mother into the coffin along with Ethan's body. After I hammered in the 3 coffin nails, I could hear banging and muffled pleas from inside. Without a moment's hesitation, I hammered the nails in tight, sealing every crack. The master's craftsmanship was excellent, it was airtight. I watched as the sounds from inside gradually faded, leaving only a weak, struggling silence. By now, the fire had spread across half the yard. Fortunately, in our mountain village, every house has its own separate yard, so the fire wouldn't spread to other homes. Hearing the commotion of many people approaching from outside, I glanced at Carter, who was still unconscious on the porch, now surrounded by flames. I paid him no mind and walked away from the inferno. When I got home and entered the yard, Mom was sitting in the main hall. She smiled when she saw me and pointed to the food on the table. You must be hungry. Eat. I nodded and walked over, eating ravenously. Mom watched me with a small smile. If your brother had half, no, even a tenth, of your ruthlessness, he never would have been bullied like that. I didn't respond, just kept eating. Back then, if I had fought to protect you, if I hadn't let them take you away, maybe they wouldn't have dared to bully our family. In this world, it's always the good people who get bullied. Mom talked to herself as I ate. When I finished, she took my bowl and chopsticks and said, go rest. You must be tired. I nodded and went into my brother's room to sleep. There was no room for me here. The next day, an emergency meeting was called at the town's ancestral hall. The village chief sat at the head table with a grave expression, his eyes scanning the anxious faces of the villagers. The atmosphere was tense, as if everyone could feel a looming sense of dread. Last night, Ethan's family met a tragic end. His sister was burned to death, and Ethan and his parents were sealed in a coffin and suffocated. The chief's voice trembled slightly, his eyes filled with deep sorrow and anger. This is an extremely vicious tragedy in our village. We must find the truth and bring justice to the dead. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as the villagers' expressions shifted from shock to fear. Some whispered that Ethan might have messed with something unclean. Others pointed fingers at Carter, as the whole village knew about his affair with Ethan's sister. Carter was rescued, but he has extensive burns. The doctors say he probably won't make it, the chief continued, his gaze turning to me. You were the only one there who survived. Tell us what happened. I was called to the front and calmly recounted the events of the night. The master and I delivered the finished coffin last night. Ethan's family took their anger out on me and the master. I'm sure you all find that perfectly normal. The villagers all avoided my gaze. The chief cleared his throat and said, "Get to the point." They beat me up and then ordered me to stand guard at the funeral hall while they went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Carter snuck into Ethan's sister's room. I don't think I need to describe what they were doing in there. This statement immediately sparked discussion among the crowd. Quite a few men had a crush on Ethan's sister, and their jealousy made them start badmouthing Carter. Carter's father, Mr. Choi, roared, "This isn't the time to talk about that. My son is on the brink of death too. We need to find the killer. Jake, you must have seen the killer, right? Why weren't you there when people arrived? Where did you go?" I said flatly, "A fire started suddenly, so I ran." You ran? There was a fire, and you just ran? Why did you run? Did you set the fire? Mr. Choi yelled. I retorted, "Why should I help people who bully me every day? Carter was the one who led the guys who crippled my dad. You expect me to save him? Am I an idiot?" My words silenced the room for a moment. While everyone could understand my position, hearing it stated so bluntly was unsettling. The chief was at a loss for words. Mr. Choi was furious, but couldn't come up with a valid argument. Failing to save someone is the same as being an accomplice. "I'll kill you, you animal." Mr. Choi charged at me, and several men from his family followed. The old clan elder, sitting in a position of authority, stood up and slammed his staff on the wooden floor, shouting, "This is the ancestral hall. Show some respect." Mr. Choi and his family had to back down. The elder sighed, glanced at me and said, "Chief, continue the investigation. If word of this gets out, our village will be utterly disgraced." The chief carefully questioned everyone, asking where they were and what they heard. Everyone had a theory, but no one suspected me. They all believed I was incapable of such a thing. Perhaps that was the only advantage of being a good person. In the end, with no leads, many started to blame it on something supernatural or a curse. Mr. Choi spoke up again. "Jake is the only one who survived. He's a prime suspect and must be locked up for intense questioning. If this isn't cleared up, people will live in fear, and there will be no peace in the village." The chief glanced at the elder. Seeing no objection, he ordered me to be locked in a room in the hall, with the door and windows sealed. As I was being led away, Mr. Choi walked up to me and whispered with hatred, "Whether you're the killer or not, if my son dies, you're going to die with him." I ignored him as two men took me to the confinement room. Mr. Choi suddenly called out, "By the way, I bet you don't know, a lot of people in this village rely on me for their livelihood, including the men guarding you." After I was pushed into the room, Mr. Choi's voice came through the heavy wooden door, dripping with cold menace. "Your little brother killed my youngest son back in the day. I've never forgotten that. This time, whether you're the real killer or not, if my son dies, you're going down with him." I sneered back, "You're just too scared to go after Ben, so you took it out on Jake all these years, right? Watching Jake get tortured made you feel powerful." Mr. Choi grunted, admitting it. "That's right. And it wasn't just me. The elder was in on it too. Because your family had twins, he's more terrified of that demon child of yours than anyone. He wanted your whole family gone more than anyone. But because of modern laws, he couldn't just burn you alive. So he let me do what I did, including having your dad crippled. The point was to force your whole family to leave town, or to die. Now you know, don't you? How unwelcome your family is here in this village. This time, after you're dead, Your mother is next." After saying his piece, Mr. Choi left with a chilling laugh, clearly hoping to terrify me. Not long after, I noticed a carpenter's file being pushed through the small air vent at the back of the room. I crept to the window to check, but I couldn't see anyone. I hid the file in my sleeve. Someone in this village wanted to use me to do their dirty work. By evening, Mr. Choi's rage seemed to have intensified. He burst in, his eyes bloodshot. As the lock turned, he kicked the door open, roaring, "My son is dead. My last child is dead. I'm taking you with him. Drag him out. I'm going to bury him alive." 2 other men lunged at me. I watched them coldly. The moment they got close, I whipped the file out of my sleeve and plunged it into one man's throat. He clawed at his neck in terror, but blood gushed between his fingers. The other man saw this and froze in panic. The kill was too clean, too fast. Mr. Choi was stunned by the sudden violence. He shouted, "You're not Jake. Jake could never be this ruthless." Then, as if realizing something, he screamed, "You're Ben." I smirked. "You got it." I lunged. Mr. Choi, a wealthy man grown soft, was no match for me. He tried to dodge, but my file found his heart. He collapsed to his knees, his face turning purple, staring at me. "You demon. We should have burned you back then." The other man scrambled out the door and ran. I laughed maniacally, reducing Mr. Choi's body to a pulp. The guards at the door saw this and fled in terror. Soon, a large group of men armed with farm tools rushed in. They saw me walk out, covered in blood, with what was left of Mr. Choi in pieces on the floor. I held up my hand. Only half of Mr. Choi's heart remained on my palm. His heart was bitter. Everyone screamed in horror. The old clan elder yelled, "That's Ben, the demon child." Someone charged, swinging a wood-cutting axe at me. The blade hit my shoulder, but my file also found his throat. His eyes widened as he stumbled back, clutching his neck, his mouth open in a silent scream as blood choked him. I pulled the axe from my own shoulder, ignoring the bleeding, and laughed as I started walking towards Mr. Choi's house. "Don't let him get away. He'll destroy the whole village," the elder shouted. Another man swung a hoe at me, but the attack was too slow. I dodged easily and with a swift slash, lopped off half his head. My brutal, reckless fighting style terrified them. No one dared to get close. They could only watch as I walked right up to the old clan elder. I placed my bloody hand on his shoulder, making him flinch. "You were the one pulling the strings all along, weren't you, my dear elder?" I said in a cold voice. The elder stood frozen, trembling, leaning on his cane for support. "Back then, I should have burned you, no matter the cost. I should have driven your whole family out of the village. But you've run out of chances now." My hand moved, and his head fell. As everyone stared in terror, I left the ancestral hall. At Mr. Choi's house, they were preparing for Carter's funeral. A mourning hall had already been set up. I walked in, leaving a trail of bloody footprints with every step. Inside, Mr. Choi's wife and daughter were pale with fright, huddled in a corner. I closed the courtyard gate. Mr. Choi's wife, mustering some unknown courage, walked towards me, shouting, "Jake, it was me and my husband who bullied your family. My 2 sons are already dead. If you want to kill someone, kill me. My daughter is innocent." I tilted my head, looking at her. "My name is Ben." At that name, her face instantly went white. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You're the demon." I nodded. "Yes, I am the demon. I was doing just fine in the psychiatric hospital. You're the ones who let me out. You all call me a demon, so I'll grant your wish. I'll do what a demon is supposed to do." Mr. Choi's wife yelled, "No, that's not it, Ben. Listen to me. Your mother's baby died during a difficult childbirth. There's something about where you and Jake came from." I frowned but remained cold. "What does that have to do with your family tormenting my brother and driving him to suicide? It was the elder who told my husband to bully your brother. He wanted your whole family dead," she said, quickly changing her story. "The elder is dead. Your husband is dead. Now it's just you and your daughter. You two were the ones spreading discord in the village, whispering behind people's backs. Don't you know that rumors can be a weapon too?" As I spoke, I thrust the file into her shoulder. She twitched a few times and collapsed. Then I looked up at Mr. Choi's eldest daughter, who was paralyzed with fear by the mourning altar. I walked over to her. When I killed your little brother at 7, you were the only other one there watching. You know what I am. You shouldn't have made the same mistake your brother did. She tried to run, but her legs were trembling so badly she kept falling down. I stood over her and drove the file into her temple. When the village chief arrived with 100 men, they kicked open the courtyard gate and were horrified by the scene. The white banner in the morning hall read, "In memory of Jake." Mr. Choi's wife and eldest daughter lay dead before the altar. The chief shouted, "Groups of 3, no 5. Search the entire village for Ben. 10 of you who can fight, come with me to Ben's house." His voice was trembling, clearly terrified by the scene. Meanwhile, I had already reached the master's workshop. Mr. Chen seemed to have been waiting for me, sitting on a long bench, smoking his pipe. I walked to the workbench and put down the blood-soaked file. "Mr. Chen, here's this back." Mr. Chen put down his pipe and looked at me. "I knew you'd make it out alive. Congratulations on getting revenge for your brother and father." I sat down beside him and said calmly, "I heard my mother's baby died during childbirth. The midwife who delivered me was your wife, wasn't she?" Mr. Chen was startled, his breathing becoming ragged. After a long moment he said, "Don't listen to that woman's nonsense. She was trying to hurt you." "Hurt me how?" "By letting me know my brother and I weren't my mother's biological children? Would someone try to kill me? Or would I kill someone?" I moved closer to Mr. Chen, placing my hands on his shoulders. He flinched, his hands trembling. I said excitedly, "It seems the game isn't over yet. You're not a target too, are you? I can smell the scent of blood." Mr. Chen said hastily, "Ben, you and Jake were twins the village chief brought from outside. When my wife delivered the baby, the chief had her deliberately switch you. Carter is your adoptive mother's real son." I was stunned. "Why?" "Because at the time, your adoptive father was the top candidate for village chief. If he had twins, not only would he be disqualified from running, he might have been burned alive," Mr. Chen said in a panic. "So the real culprit is the current village chief," I said. Just as I finished speaking, the workshop door was kicked open. The village chief stormed in alone. Seeing Mr. Chen's state, he chuckled and raised an old shotgun, pointing it at me. "Old Chen, I took pity on you back then. You were good at keeping your mouth shut, so I let you live. But it turns out, only the dead can be trusted. Your wife knew the most, so I had someone push her into the well. Now all the people who should be dead are dead. Only you two are left." The chief smiled and pulled the trigger. The shotgun blast hit my chest, and blood sprayed out. I grabbed the file from the table and threw it, hitting the chief in the stomach. He cried out in pain, dropping the shotgun and clutched his wound, doubling over. Mr. Chen suddenly charged, pulling out a scraper and slashing at the chief's neck. "You bastard! I did so much for you, and you killed my wife. I'll kill you," Mr. Chen yelled, repeatedly cutting at the chief's neck and chest with the scraper. The chief gritted his teeth, pulled the file from his stomach, and plunged it into Mr. Chen's side. The blow made Mr. Chen collapse. It must have hit his kidney. The chief looked at me, opening his mouth to say something, but with his throat sliced up, no words came out. A moment later, he died with his eyes open. Mr. Chen's face was ashen. Seeing the chief dead, he stopped moving and his breathing slowly ceased. I struggled to my feet, my legs trembling. I had lost too much blood. The shotgun hadn't hit anything vital, but it had still taken half my life. I forced myself home. Mom was sitting in the main hall. When she saw the state I was in, she rushed over and hugged me, crying, "Ben, you've suffered so much." I leaned on her shoulder and whispered, "Mom, this time, you won't send me away again, will you?" "No, never. Mom was wrong before. You and Jake are both my good sons," Mom sobbed, holding me tight. I smiled and slowly closed my eyes. Mom sobbed for a few more moments, then took a few deep breaths, hoisted me back into the hall, and set me on a stool, my body slumped over the table. "Are you satisfied now?" Mom said to the empty room. She picked up a cup of tea from the table and drank it in one gulp. From the shadows around the hall, dozens of men emerged, each holding steel pitchforks and sharp blades. Seeing me dead, they let out a collective sigh of relief. Mom leaned over my shoulder, looking at my face. "You wanted to burn our family alive, didn't you? Well, now you can. Burn us all together." As she spoke, Black blood trickled from her nose and mouth. Afterward, all the men of the village carried our family to the back of the mountain and burned us. Only then could they truly breathe a sigh of relief. After all, I had killed so many people, and everyone said I was a demon. They were all terrified. The end.